Hey, everybody, welcome back to the podcast. You're listening to the longest running superhero role playing game on Earth, also known as the Continuum Chronicles. As always, I'm your host, Chris Kent, the Game Master, or GM for short. And today we're going to be talking about Hawkman, who has never been my favorite comic book character. Looking at how many times DC has tried to rework him or his origin story, I'm guessing he's not their favorite either. But somebody once said, there's no such thing as bad characters, just bad writers. So I've always taken that as a challenge to try to take these characters who maybe aren't anyone's favorite, and I try my best with them. So even if you don't like Hawkman, and believe me, I get it, hang in there, and hopefully I will pleasantly surprise you. Having said that, don't forget to smash the like button, ring the bell to know when I upload stuff, and make sure you're subscribed. Now, without any further ado, let's dive into today's adventure. The prologue begins in 6600 BC on the planet Thanagar, where the Thanagarians are either extremely wealthy and corrupt or extremely poor and victims. There is no in between. Katar Hall and Shaira Thal are basically cops, and they themselves are poor, but most of the time they find themselves serving the ultra wealthy and corrupt. So they don't love their job. One day, an alien traveler arrives on Thanagar and commits several heinous crimes, so the Hawks begin to hunt him. By the way, I should mention that on Thanagar, people are as afraid of Hawks as people on Earth are afraid of Batman. The idea is that their ancient ancestors were snatched up and devoured by some kind of huge alien birds of prey, and so because of that, the police there use the hawk-themed equipment to strike fear in the hearts of their opponents. At any rate, all that said, so the alien criminal flees Hawkworld, and Katar and Shaira track him through the stars to the planet Earth. This criminal brings his ship in low over Earth's North Pole. The planet's magnetic field interferes with Katar's sensors, and for the moment, they've lost him. As they fly by their prey, the criminal then attacks them from behind. Katar and Shaira lose control of their vessel, and they crash land in ancient Egypt. Unable to return to their homeworld, and frankly not very motivated to do so anyways, the Hawks use their advanced technology to assist the native humans. The Thanagarians teach humans how to build the pyramids. They use their technology to irrigate the land and bring about lush vegetation in the middle of a desert, so on and so forth. Katar and Shaira are here for centuries, and over time, Katar falls in love with Shaira, but he makes a huge mistake. He assumes that just because they're both Thanagarians, she's just going to go along with everything, and he's not going to have to put in any effort on his end. That is, to say the very least, a massive turnoff for her. And besides, she had a fiance back home named Haro Halleck. So she does not return Katar's affection. Then we get into the main plot of today's adventure. Years pass, and the Egyptians refer to Katar as Khufu, and their name for Shaira is Che. They rule Egypt, and despite their protests, the Egyptians think they are gods. Unfortunately, no amount of explaining has cleared up that matter. One day, another alien mistaken as being divine ventures to Egypt, and he is called Dagda. He fills roles in Ireland similar to the roles of Zeus and Aphrodite in Greece. And as the supposed Irish god of love, he's irresistible to women. So Shaira is immediately smitten with him. And when he explains that he's an alien too, in a simulation, or excuse me, in a situation similar to hers, their common ground only fans the flames of her desire for him. And to nobody's surprise, this makes Katar furious. Also, in Egypt at this time is an alien named Nabu, who hails from the planet Celia. Naboo looks a lot like Colonel Sanders, to be honest. He has a white mustache and an old-timey white beard. He's wearing kind of a bluish turquoise headdress and a golden Egyptian shent, which was the skirt-like garment that their men wore. Naboo is an agent of order and goes by the name Fate. So, at any rate, Fate reminds Katar that just because he wants Shaira, it doesn't automatically make her his. Katar says he knows that, but it's frustrating that he's been here for so long and Dagda only just arrived. Fate says he understands why Katar is frustrated. Katar comments that Fate knows the secrets of the universe and then asks him to teach him about women. Fate quips that some mysteries are beyond even his reach. Meanwhile, Shaira takes Dagda to a private chamber within her palace, and here she shows him the ship that she arrived in. It's hermetically sealed, and as such, her Thanagarian gear is in perfect condition inside. She takes him in and shows him her old uniform and her hawk-themed helmet. By the way, she's wearing a different hawk-themed helmet now, but this one was made by the Egyptians. So Dagda asks if the door to the ship locks, and she asks why. So he takes off her mask and embraces her, and she melts into his arms. Back at court, Pharaoh Qatar hears many requests for help from his people. A man named Set shows in the next peasant who tells Qatar that some of his cattle were stolen, and he thinks his neighbor did it. Qatar is thinking about Shaira and Dagda, though, and not able to pay attention to what the peasant is actually saying. So Qatar says, that's nice. Both the peasant and Set are surprised by this. Set apologizes to the peasant and explains that the pharaoh has a lot on his mind. Set gets Qatar's attention and repeats what the peasant's problem is. Qatar snaps to and apologizes for his mind wandering. He tells the peasant that he'll order some of his men to look into this potential crime, and then the peasant leaves, thanking him. So Set asks Qatar what troubles him, and Qatar tells him. So Set hatches a plan. Shaira returns, her hair disheveled. She has a certain glow about her. He tells Qatar that she invited Dagda to stay on as their honored guest, and that she'd like to have a feast in his honor this evening. Qatar tells her that he is the pharaoh, and as such, he will not be given orders by anyone. Shaira says they are equals, and Dagda is their honored guest, and there will be a feast tonight. Then she storms off, annoyed by Qatar. Dagda leaves behind her. Qatar frowns. Naboo says that could have gone better. Time passes and evening rolls around. Set watches as servants set the table. Golden goblets are placed around the table, and when no one is looking, Set summons the most venomous snake he can think of. He places its head on the goblets of Dagda and Shaira and then milks the snake, forcing its venom into the goblets. He then leaves without anyone seeing him. Set desires the throne for himself, and if all goes according to plan, he'll assassinate Dagda and Shaira, then tell Qatar that he granted the pharaoh's wish. Qatar will be so upset that he'll take his own life, and Set will ascend the throne, rule Egypt, and then conquer the world. One by one, everyone shows up for the feast. Dagda and Shaira are sat next to each other. Qatar is at the head of the table next to Shaira. Fate is seated across from Dagda, but doesn't sense the snake venom in the goblets. That's not an automatic power that Fate has. He would have to substitute sorcery for the detect power, and the player who was playing Fate did not do that. Nobody can see the venom either, since each goblet is opaque, and nobody searches the table or their place setting. Rather, everyone is watching Qatar stare daggers at Dagda. Dagda sees Katar do this, and for a moment questions if Shaira was actually single when they hooked up. Dagda tries to not get involved with married women, etc., so he asks Shaira if she's single. Shaira smiles and squeezes his hand and says, I don't know. Am I? In her mind, she's trying to ask Dagda if she and Dagda are like officially an item. But on Dagda's end, he's confused. And again, he's wondering if he's coming between Shaira and Katar. Dagda says, I thought you were single. Katar speaks up and says, then you thought wrong. Shaira glares at Katar and says, no, Katar, you and I were never together, and that attitude is why. Katar is furious. Shaira is furious. Everyone else feels awkward. The serving girl pours wine into the goblets, including the two with the snake venom in them. Dagda says, well, I could use a drink to break the tension. And with that, he chugs his wine. He drinks the snake venom, but Dagda has systemic antidote. Simply put, that's immunity to poison. The servant pours wine in Shaira's goblet, but an angry Shaira says, no, thank you. I'm suddenly not hungry. Shaira trying to let Katar know she's not happy with him. Dagda, wanting to lighten the mood, goes into Dagda mode. So he chugs Shaira's wine, and the venom that was meant for her. Then he chugs more wine, impressing some people, but it doesn't work on everyone. And a good many people still feel very uncomfortable that the Pharaoh is so angry. Set, for instance, is not one bit amused. He uses his sorcery to see why Dagda's not dying. Fate notices this and uses his sorcery to see what Set is doing with that sorcery. Fate figures everything out and alerts Katar and Shaira that Set just tried to poison them, and a big fight breaks out. Set pushes the attack, substituting his sorcery for a mind blast. He rolls doubles, getting a critical success, and he knocks out the alien called Naboo in one powerful hit. So Fate is down for the count. For his automatic action, Set activates spirit travel, self linked, becoming what looks like a living shadow. In reality, Set is now a fourth dimensional being. He can attack three-dimensional opponents, but they can't touch him. So, for instance, when Dagda tries to punch Set using super strength, Dagda's fist passes harmlessly through him. Hawkman and Hawkgirl hold out their hands, and in the same way that Mjolnir returns to the hand of Thor after being thrown, their Thanagarian lightning maces come to their hands. The maces are made of nth metal, and as it just so happens, nth metal is one of the few materials that can affect a fourth dimensional object. So Hawkgirl hits Set, doing damage, and then Hawkman does likewise. Set tries to demoralize Hawkman, saying what he did for the Pharaoh. Hawkgirl says, you ordered him to kill us? Hawkman says, no, I would never hurt you. I love you. Dagda uses an ability called Elder Form. Simply put, it allows him to mimic the natural abilities of any being he's encountered. So Dagda becomes a fourth dimensional shadow version of himself, and now he can punch Set. The heroes all beat down Set until he's almost out of hit points, and on his final turn, he substitutes sorcery for teleportation and vanishes. So what that looks like to the characters in the game is that he runs into a shadow and disappears. Dagda returns to normal. Shaira checks on Fate, who regains consciousness now that the fight is over. Dagda tells Katar he fights well. Katar knows Dagda bedded the woman he loves, though, so Katar turns and walks away. As he approaches Shaira, she says, get away from me. Katar tries to explain that he never gave any orders to Set, but Shaira wants to be left alone, so she leaves by herself. Everyone stands there in awkward silence. Dagda looks around the room for a minute and then says, "So thanks for having me for dinner." Then we get to the epilogue of this adventure. Kang the Conqueror travels back in time to ancient Egypt to a time after Hawkman and Hawkgirl had gone their separate ways. Kang's time ship crashed in the desert, and Kang was blinded in the process. Using an army of robots and weapons from his time ship, Kang easily took over the kingdom of Egypt, renaming himself Rama Tut. Learning of a radioactive herb, Rama Tut used it to restore his lost vision shortly thereafter. And Rama was worshipped by the Egyptians, and he ruled over them for 20 years. It was at this time that this era began to host a series of time-traveling superheroes from the 20th century. One such group was the Fantastic Four, who were searching for the radioactive herb that cured Ramatut's blindness so they could restore the sight of their friend, Alicia Masters. Rama's guards, with the help of Ramatut's ultra diode ray, managed to defeat and capture the Fantastic Four. The heroes were brought before Ramatut, who decided to enslave the males and make the invisible girl his bride. While in captivity, the Fantastic Four encountered another slave of Ramatut. He was the being who would one day be known as Apocalypse. Ramatut had offered to make him his heir, but Apocalypse had refused. Thanks to the manifestation of his mutant powers, the mutant who would be known as Apocalypse manages to break free and then fight back against Rama's armies. However, by the time En Saba Nur got free, Rama's kingdom was already beginning to crumble. Ben Grimm then freed the other members of the Fantastic Four, and they chased after Ramatut, who then fled back to his own era in his time machine. The Fantastic Four then recovered the radioactive herb they needed and returned to their era as well. While En Saba Nur himself was enhanced by Rama's technology, he then went into the desert to live out his destiny, believing that only the fit survive. And that's it for that game session. We had fun playing it. I hope you had a good time listening to it. If so, smash the like button, ring the bell so you know when I upload stuff. Make sure you're subscribed. And as always, leave us a comment, as that really helps out with the YouTube algorithm. I hope you guys have a great weekend, and we'll see you in the next video. Bye.